You know, if you can, go on a straight line and just wiggle the steering wheel back and forth. Make sure it's responsive. Make sure that it turns the way you want it to, and that there's not too much play in the steering wheel. That'll kind of give you an idea of how well maintained the suspension is and the steering components. Like I said, most counties kind of have to keep it fairly safe. If you're buying it from just a charter company, they typically don't want lawsuits, but just cover your hind end is all. Another thing that would probably be useful to talk about is different types of buses. We ended up with a Puller mountain style bus, I guess, or city.
Yeah, it's 32 foot long, 8.5 feet wide.
And it's designed to go, stop and go in the city, in the mountains, and it does really good. Our pros, the best part of it so far is if we're trying to drive up in the mountains, you can get up and go. It's difficult to get up to speed at times, but it's a lot better than something that has taller gearing. Basically what I mean by gearing is, if you think of your gears as a lever, basically, we'll say this is your your gear in a lever form. But if these are your wheels, bigger or shorter gears. Let's see. Longer legged buses are going to have taller gears, which means it's going to be trying to push from about here. It's going to have about this much leverage to try to turn your wheels. So it's going to take a lot more power to get up to speed and get going. Whereas shorter legged buses have a higher ratio. So it's going to be, having this much more oomph to actually get your wheels spinning. And as it goes through the gear set, you can feel the difference. But getting up to speed, that's what the advantage is. By no means are any of these buses
Like
fast.
cars.
Yeah, you're not going to be impressed regardless.
I mean, we were doing about 55, topped out at 60 usually,
yeah.
on the way from Colorado to Tennessee.
And another thing you may find sometimes as an option in the mountain or city buses is that they do have sometimes a better cooling package. A bigger radiator, bigger intercooler for the turbo. They're designed to be able to handle the stresses and increased heat of stop and go traffic. They don't have to have 70 mile an hour air just pushing through all the time. You can sit there and it can stay cool without overheating. One of the cons though, like she said, is it's short-legged. You're not going to be able to go, you can go 70 miles an hour, but you're going to be kind of pushing it and losing engine efficiency. But also with, the better gearing, a lot of companies can figure that they can use a smaller engine because they're over-engineering it to go slow. Basically, a smaller engine isn't going to give you the power you need to get up and go and really have your high speeds. And, basically when you have a smaller engine driving a larger piece of equipment as well, you have a lot of heat buildup, which again, back to the hoses, back to everything, it'll just create a lot of heat stress on everything. Burn up your hoses, burn up any lines that may be near the engine, or make them really brittle to the point where they're ready to break. So keep that in mind.
And it gets just hotter and louder up in the front because the engine is literally right by the driver's seat. So, I mean, I don't know exactly how he was doing, but
it wasn't bad.
Because we don't have air conditioning in here.
Yeah, cons of an older bus, absolutely. But it wasn't bad. I do plan on putting some noise canceling mat in the engine compartment, just as an extra little bit. I had my headphones in the whole way, so it really wasn't that big a deal.
But when I would call you on the road trip, it was so loud I could hardly hear him. So
which that was kind of my headphones, but also the engine doesn't help. But if you are able to find a highway bus, I mean these are layman's terms. They're not actual technical terms, but they're going to be designed for driving on the highway. So if you plan on making road trips all the time from, coast to coast, or you have just all these destinations where you don't really have to go onto dirt roads and stuff a whole bunch, obviously it can still handle dirt roads, but if your main thing is just going to be, state to state to state to state and all as fast as you can do it, you may want to shoot for a highway bus. Basically, they just have longer legs, shorter gearing, and basically they're designed to be 70, 75 miles an hour all the time.
I just wanted to look to you.
Alright, holding it up good enough for you.
I just wanted to see.
But with highway buses comes other challenges where typically to get the same or more weight up to speed, you need more power, and the most reliable way to do that is put a bigger engine in it. So your mileage may suffer. With a bigger engine, it's obviously easier to just put the pedal down and it'll go, and you'll consume fuel a lot faster. That being said, it's a lot less stress on the engine, so breakdowns aren't going to be probably as common. And the con for that would pretty much be if you have tall, long-legged bus. Like I said, if you're trying to go a bunch of dirt roads and up really steep hills and grades, if you're going up through the mountains all the time, stopping and going, that's where you're going to feel it in a highway bus. Is it's not going to accelerate as fast. It's going to have to work harder on the long grades, and it's going to kind of be stuck between gears somewhat. But another option, we didn't go for it, but short buses. If we were to really want to get out there in places where most other things can't be accessed with our house bus, that would probably be the advantage of getting a short bus. I know in some places you can find them with 4-wheel drive, which would be really cool. You can really get them back in the sticks and back where people aren't going to be as much.
Probably less restrictions whenever you go to campsites and stuff. I know some camping areas won't let a school bus in just because they're too big and bulky, but there's other people that will let vans in, and obviously if you get a short bus, it's about the same size of a van, so.
And they're going to have much better turning radius, obviously.
Yeah.
Another nice thing about short buses is for some that want it, there's most of them have a gas option. I know a lot of them have either it used to be Ford front ends, but a lot of Chevy front ends on short buses now. And you can get like medium size that would have medium duty stuff under it. But if you're not comfortable with the diesel engine, that's totally up to you. In some places I know it's really hard to find diesel fuel for a reasonable price. So gas engine may be the option, and a short bus would definitely accommodate that. The one con you're probably gonna have to deal with the most is just living space. If you can make room for it, and if you can plan it out well, it's not a big deal. After living in this thing for a while, I'm sure we're gonna find a lot of ways to downsize yet again. I mean, it just comes with living simply and being able to use things multiple different ways.
Yeah.
Or spaces in different ways.
I mean, take Rolling Vistas, for instance. They had a bus the same size as us, and it was just themselves. And granted, their lifestyle's a little bit more different, and they use their bus for traveling, whereas we're going to just use ours for stationary most of the time. They just downsized to a van, so that works for them, and, to each their own. It's up to you what you want, what you can live with, what, really matters the most to you.
And the part about getting a short bus, that would somewhat outdo a van is just your width that you're going to have to play with. The van life is great. It's a little daunting for a lot of people just coming into this style of, tiny living. But a short bus is going to be as wide as a normal bus, so 90.5 inches wide is what ours is. you would still have that width to play with in a short bus, and then you would have however long you end up finding. But in a van, it's not going to be any wider than a normal passenger vehicle, like a truck or anything like that. So pretty much about 5 feet wide is what you're going to end up as far as usable space in a van. So just, if you're debating in that line, obviously this video is probably not going to be what you're looking for, but that's just my 2 cents on it, is at least with this you have the width. And if you wanted to, you could raise a short bus. It'd be kind of goofy looking, but to each his own. You make your space what you want it to be. So a lot of people ask the difference between pushers and pullers. Ours is obviously a puller, and like she said, it was kind of difficult talking on the phone. I did have my headphones in, which are just cheap Bluetooth headphones. They don't have the best microphone, and it's obviously not noise canceling. But as soon as I changed to my actual phone, handheld instead of over Bluetooth, it made a world of difference, and it wasn't insurmountable. I don't think she could even hear anything at that point.
Mm-mm.
But that's just quality of equipment. A puller is nice in certain ways. Basically, your heat is all in the front of the bus, so in the winter when you start the engine, and if you're driving it in the cold, basically you're gonna have heat right away, or not right away, but it's all right here in the front of the bus. It doesn't have to travel from the rear of the bus all the way up to the front, heat everything up, and heat up all that cold coolant that's in those lines. That's one pro to it. And another thing that I kind of like personally, doesn't necessarily suit everybody, but I like listening to the vehicle as I'm driving it. If you're worried about anything going wrong, it's really nice to have the engine close. If you hear anything change, any crazy noises, obviously you're going to be able to hear it with a puller if the engine's right underneath you or right in front of you. Whereas with a pusher, the engine is all the way in the back, and once you build your house, hopefully it'll be pretty quiet, but you'll have a little less time to react. It'll be kind of when you start losing power that you may notice something's going wrong, or your gauges may tell you, hopefully, but I just like paying attention to what's going on, even if it may be causing fatigue because you get tired of listening to loud things and heat. But it's kind of relative, whatever you think or whatever you like to put up with. One of the biggest advantages with a pusher, though, is you don't have a drive shaft running the whole length of the bus. And a drive shaft, for those who don't know, is you have your engine, you have your transmission. Basically, the engine makes rotational power, transmission decides how fast to spin that, and then your drive shaft takes that power to your axle, which spins your wheels. So on this, we have, I'd say probably about 20 feet of drive shaft that goes down the center of the bus, and it pretty much cuts through all our usable space. That would be
It's not like bad though.
yeah, no, it's not horrible. That and the retarder take up a decent amount of space under the bus, though. So if you did want to build under storage, which we did want to do quite a bit, and we obviously can behind the axle, basically a pusher is probably going to be a little more useful as far as that goes, because I've seen a lot of people actually put all the way through storage underneath a pusher, because there's no drive shaft, anywhere forward of the rear axle. So a lot of extra storage room if you need it. It may be useful.
And I was going to say, with a pusher as opposed to a puller, I mean, we're planning on using our puller as kind of like a dog sleeping area, whenever we're not using it for, the little dog house is going to be for the dog bed. But I've seen a lot of people, generally, you put your bed in the back of the bus, and there's already kind of a platform that you can already kind of set your bus on, or your bed on top of, if that's a route that you want to go. I mean, I purposely didn't want a pusher for that reason, because we wanted to do storage underneath the bed. So that kind of takes away your storage under the bed, but like he said, you have storage that you can use underneath the bus, so it's not like a big difference, but those are just things that we were considering when we were looking into getting our bus.
Yeah, and when we were doing our bus, basically some of our biggest stipulations were we wanted to build it so that it could handle pretty much any cold weather. So everything that could freeze potentially is we want to keep it in the bus, keep it warm, keep it in the living area. So when we build our bed in the back, like she said, the storage underneath is going to be, in the winter, obviously not Tennessee, but in some places, if wherever we end up, we don't have to worry about having a hose hooked up to the bus and then that freezes, so we don't have any water. Basically, learning from experience, we want to be able to have a water tank on the bus, in the bus, that will not freeze no matter how cold it gets outside. We had even though it didn't happen, just the terror of dealing with frozen RV lines and frozen tanks.
Yeah, I mean, we went 7 to 8 months without water in our travel trailer when we lived in Colorado.
Yeah.
Just because the temperatures were way too cold to be running a hose of water, and where we were at, we didn't have the option to just go.
I'll take a shower somewhere.
Yeah, so.
I mean, we made it work.
A little difficult, yeah.
One thing too, and the reason we're putting the water inside under the bed, a lot of people don't think about is, even though if your bus is stationary and warm, it may do okay and your water may not freeze, but when you're driving the bus in cold weather, it can become an issue where the wind chill becomes a factor. So we didn't want any tanks underneath or outside for any reason, because at that point, if we're driving in cold weather or we drive through a snowstorm, we could have damage immediately, pretty much, and not really be able to do anything about it. Unfortunately, we can't just bed down on the highway. So we figured we'll keep it all contained, we'll keep it all from freezing, and that way life's just easier.
Yeah, and like I said, every person has their own ideas about stuff. I mean, people probably think we're going overboard with some of the decisions we've made, but like we said, we've been living out of a travel trailer for about 2 years now, and we've learned a lot from just living in that small space, that we wanted to make sure we had good insulation. We wanted to make sure, like he said, our lines weren't going to freeze, and if we ever happened to be in a scenario where we had to deal with that, we wouldn't be SOL. And even right now, we're dealing with mold in our travel trailer, and so right now we're taking every precaution we can with pressure treated wood and all kinds of other stuff to make sure we're not going to have, rotting boards underneath our feet as opposed to rotting OSB in our travel trailer and stuff. So anyways, those are some other things, and I wanted to kind of start wrapping this video up because I'm pretty sure it's probably pretty long at this point, but
it's more footage you can use to edit out.
But basically, some other options that you should consider are, if you want air conditioning in your bus. I know a lot of buses in the South, Texas, probably out here in Tennessee, a few other areas, they probably will have air conditioning built into the actual school bus. It might be a little bit more for that, I don't know. I mean, if you can find it on auction, then cool. But then, or in the winter, if you want heating options, which we do have heating options here, which works very good. But like I said, we don't have air conditioning.
Which just gives us the chance to run, new stuff. That's the thing too, is, it's nice to have the option, but what are you building it for? Are you wanting to build it extra efficient? Because I can guarantee you something built in 1993, as far as the AC unit on a bus, isn't going to run off your solar panels.
Yeah.
The newer, more efficient AC stuff, just keep in mind what you want to do that for. Don't purposely spend more money on a bus with an AC unit if you don't need that, if you're just going to update it anyway.
Yeah, and if you're going to use solar and you're going to put it on your roof and you have a rooftop air conditioner that's taking up space that may not be as efficient, like he was saying, then it's kind of wasted space that you could be using to put your solar panels up there and whatnot. But I mean, there's a whole lot of things to consider that I'm sure you probably already have if you're at this stage of thinking about it. But make sure that you look into the different options out there and see what there is, because it can get very overwhelming, just so many different options and stuff. I mean, I even wrote on here, you know, buses that have the actual front hood and stuff, and how you can potentially lose more building space, because even though your bus is 32 feet long, you only have, you know, 28 feet of useful space, because the other 4 feet of it are, you know, the actual hood. So those are things to consider, and, you know, I don't know if you have anything extra to add, but I just wanted to talk about how we were able to find the bus, how we got it for so cheap, how, you know, other things to look for. And I mean, he's got a lot of mechanical, electrical experience and stuff like that. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just pay attention to the little details. I mean, if you can, just take as much time with what you are buying as you can. I mean, you got to realize that this is going to be your not forever home, but maybe. I mean, if this is something you at least plan to invest all the time and effort and money into to build a house out of it, even if it's just a hermit crab shell, you know, even if it only lasts you a couple years, you know, make sure that it's going to last you those few years. You know, there's no point in rushing a sale, or, you know, the fever is strong and it'll get you, but, you know, make sure you're paying attention. If it leaks, you know, some leaks you can look past, some you can't. It's extra money. You know, how much money are you going to have to throw away? How much money are you going to have after you put, you know, all this money and effort into building a house? I mean, luckily we're able to so far find a lot of you know, reclaimed materials. We have a few things that our friends have thrown in. There's one of the neighbors around here is nice enough to actually help us out with a bunch of wood that we probably will end up putting on the roof here. But you know, plan for the worst, because, you know, the expenses may just slow you down from living your dream. I mean, getting out there and actually doing it.
And the reason that we make these videos, I mean, it's nice to document the process, to look back on ourselves, but is to help those out there, because when we were looking into it, yeah, there's people building their buses and it's cool to see all the neat things that people are doing, but I don't feel like there's very much information out there on the big details of, like, okay, I get that someone's doing this, I would love to be able to do that, but how do I achieve that? What do I need to look for? What's the best option? And, you know, like I said, to each their own, but, you know, that's kind of why we wanted to make this video, is to help somewhat educate people and help them out if need be. I mean, that's why I made the video on the disaster that we had with our insulation. It's not fun to look back and say, oh, you know, we wasted that money, but if it can help someone else from making that mistake, you know, why not? But
well, if nothing else, like I said, it kept us from actually being in here. I mean, the money does suck, but it's more and more so. It's like it's just one more thing preventing us from actually finishing it, which we're obviously excited for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing, is you want to see it done, you want to live in it, and any little issue along the way, especially mechanical issues, are not only going to sap your time, but they're going to take out money. So
yeah, and if you know what to look for ahead of time, you know, you can save so much money on not having to go to a mechanic and just being able to look up what you think it could be or something like that. I mean, it could be as simple as a thing. I mean, what he was talking about with the fuel line earlier, we were literally going to be leaving the next day to leave from Colorado to move out here to Tennessee, and the bus just kept stalling and shutting down, and we realized that, like he said, the fuel line had dry rotted, and it was a simple fix, but it ended up taking us nearly a day and a half to do it, because nobody in the area had the proper fuel line we needed. So, you know, just looking into things like that, you know, make sure everything is structurally sound, mechanically sound, because the last thing you want to do is to break down on the side of the road, especially when you're traveling, you know, 1,200 miles to get somewhere.
And one more final note from me on the mechanical part is, I'll see it, you know, you see it a lot where as soon as something has a mechanical problem, everybody says, oh, it's a piece of junk. I don't know why I bought this thing. It's such a piece of crap. And, you know, obviously there are lemons out there, but if you're in a position where you just bought a bus or you've maybe had a bus for a minute and it does start giving you a little trouble, you know, obviously, you know, the mechanic looking at it is probably going to be able to give you a better actual answer to your questions, but you know, a lot of things can just be fixed on buses. That's the beauty of it too, is, you know, a mechanical engine, something breaks, you can fix it. So don't just lose all hope. Don't just, you know, start freaking out that it's not worth it or that you have to abandon your life altogether. You know, a lot of people get disheartened when something breaks down. You know, it's not as serious sometimes as it may seem. So, you know, if you do find a bus that can be marginal, just stick in there. It'll eventually get figured out, and if it becomes a money pit, obviously abandon it. But you know, it's not as serious as it, you know.
Yeah. Well, I hope this video helped you guys out. Like I said, you know, that's kind of why we make them. And on another note, I'm not quite sure, but I'll put a link in the description below. We started a little fundraiser because we actually want to start flipping buses for people, not necessarily the whole entire thing, but at least the teardown process for a lot of people, because we know that it can be a little daunting to go through the teardown. I mean, most of the Skoolies that we see for sale are unfinished because they get halfway through the teardown process, say it's too much work, and give up on it. So we plan on trying to do something like that. And so he started a fundraiser. If you're interested in supporting us or supporting us on our build, you know, we'd appreciate anything and everything.
And originally we weren't even going to do that, but basically we came out here and we've been talking to a lot of people lately, and you know, everyone it seems we talk to either knows someone that did or knows someone that really wants to. They just don't have the time or money to spend in it. So yeah. Basically, if you do jump into the fundraiser, our hope is that we can, you know, take these buses there's a lot of buses just sitting out here. It's kind of odd, but yeah. You know, just take those, at least get them to a point where, you know, someone could either, you know, start fresh like we're at, where you have the subfloor in and everything can be just added from there, or we just tear it down and rebuild it and turn it into a home for people that don't actually have the time or money to do it. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of stress, and there's a lot of people that would love to live in a bus, but just can't make it work right now.
Yeah. I mean, is there a particular, is it just the link, or is there like an actual name for the fundraiser?
Yeah, the fundraiser name is Buses for Better. Our, you know,
BUSES for BUBETTER.
Buses for Butter.
Buses for Butter.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, everything that gets donated to that is obviously going straight back into buses, purchasing buses, finding materials, you know, just the time involved to take buses apart. And that's another thing too, is using my abilities and experience. I kind of wanted to take some of that money and put it into, you know, making sure the mechanical systems are sound, because I know that's an endless headache, it seems like, for some people. So if we can get a sound product going, just get people out there, get people having fun and living their dream. I mean, this community is a really cool community to be part of, and you know, if we can expand it, then let's do it.
Alrighty, so I'm sure this video is pretty long right now, but like I said, thank you so much for watching, and I will be making a video soon on, you know, how we were able to insure our bus whenever we had to move it off of the actual lot we bought it from, and how we were able to actually title and register our bus as a recreational vehicle. So stick around, hopefully you'll see that soon, and we're starting to make some more progress here. We, in the last 2 weeks, were able to get the radiant flooring done and the subfloor, so now we're starting to make some pretty good progress. So anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.